Hey everybody, Riot Mort here, back with another patch postmortem with Riot Kent. This is the postmortems where we talk about what worked, what didn't, where we screwed up, how we blame Mortdog, that kind of stuff. So,
Yep.
the
That's
usual.
very
Uh,
important stuff.
so I'm finishing up a 2-week vacation, but I was obviously here as we set up this patch, so we figured it made sense for me to do the postmortem here. But so I've been out for 2 weeks. Kent, how's it been? Without your faces and dad jokes all the time.
Yeah, it's just not the same without being told that your face is a playtest every morning. So, gonna be excited when you come back next week more.
Lot to do for sure. Cool. So 12.7 was the world's patch, and we're recording this on April 22nd. It'll go live tomorrow. We still have the rest of the China regionals to go through. We saw the last chance qualifier already. And then obviously Worlds is next weekend. So we'll really get to see, the culmination of the meta and 3 weeks of like the players really learning it. But you got a chance to see the data. I haven't actually seen the data yet, so I'm curious. Like, how are you feeling about how this patch overall landed?
Yeah. So as y'all know, we didn't end up doing a B patch for this patch. Because when we looked at the data, everything looked kind of in line. Nothing broke the frameworks for like what we think should be B patched for a Worlds patch. And as you know, our bar, like we mentioned this during the rundown, but our bar is pretty high for B patching this. Because we want to give players who are playing in the Worlds patch as much time as possible to like practice on this set or on this patch. So basically, things that looked really strong, we clearly know are very strong. Sivir, Darkstar, mutants, things like that. They looked strong, but nothing looked crazy out of line. But recently, it's felt like those things are getting more and more optimized. Players are getting even better at playing them, and it feels kind of like it might be starting to like creep towards where the bar used to be. I think I look at data now, it still won't be there, but it's just starting to feel more, closer to that.
Yeah, well, like I said, we'll have to see how Worlds plays out. And even as we saw last year, which, I'll be the first to admit that like the Kled meta was not the best meta to go into Worlds, it still created some unique dynamics where it was like who can play around the Kled, who didn't, and we saw our winner actually basically never play Kled. So I'll be curious if something similar happens with Sivir. I know we saw like day one China regionals, Sivir was played a lot, but it had very mixed results. So because it was so contested, so kind of interesting.
Yeah, I think it'll be interesting to see how that plays out, especially with it being that contested. Like, will players try to avoid it, and if players do avoid it, how will the players who like go into it, end up? And then like basically after that, it's like, will we start contesting them? How are players going to make decisions around it? Because at this point, we're past the point of like depatching, and so
Yeah.
it'll be exciting to see how like players adapt to this strategy, adapt the strategies to like what they have in front of them for this patch.
Yep. All right, let's go over the changes, and then we can talk a little bit more about Worlds. I think we're both excited for that.
Yep.
So big thing, obviously, last patch was a ton of augment changes, and I think generally these were all pretty well received. But let's go over them super quick and debate me if I get anything wrong in your opinion.
Sure.
Double Trouble nerf seems good. The augment's still good. It's not as much of a free first anymore, so I think Double Trouble might finally be right where it's supposed to be.
Yep. Agree.
Electrocharge 1, 2, 3 got buffed. I think these are another example where like they're probably where they're supposed to be. Maybe you could make the argument that Electrocharge 3 is still a little weak for a prismatic. This might be one of those cases where like maybe it's just not a fun prismatic. It's just like eh. But otherwise, I feel like Electrocharge 1 and 2 are good.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like it's in a pretty good spot. I think Electrocharge 3 just asks you to play a very specific type of comp, and I think it makes it very narrow. So like maybe, yeah, can make the argument that like that's not what players want. Majority of players want, and so like should this be a prismatic or not?
Yep. Enchanter Soul. I mean, some extra gold, great. I think when we start to hit this number of gold, though, it starts to like lose its identity. Is it like Windfall Light, or is it actually an Enchanter augment? Like, eh. Which again, I think says something about the trait, and we'll see after. I know you guys are buffing it next patch, so like we'll see if it becomes even better. But overall, it's a lever. It's a nice lever to have.
Yeah, I think this is like a healthy change, but personally, I don't like that the number has gone so high, and so Yeah, we'll have to see how it lands with the enchanter buffs that are coming next patch.
4 score as a silver that drops 3. So this only drops in 3/3. I know China loves this augment because they just look at it as another econ augment. 12 gold at 3/3 for a silver is like really good for the way they like to play. Overall, though, the fact that you only get 3, it's kind of awkward. I don't know. This is another augment where I'm like, should this augment exist in the game? Question mark. I think it was a healthy change. If this augment is going to exist, it is in a much better spot. I'm not sure this is the kind of augment we want in TFT long term.
Yeah, I agree with that second part. But I think for like this change and for this set, I think and for like TFT right now, basically, I think this was a good change, and I think players like I've seen a lot of players like be excited to take it and kind of get like direction from where their 3/3 comp goes. So I think this was a really good change.
Yeah, I agree. Golden Ticket. I think this is another example. I mentioned this on the podcast I was on yesterday, but like Golden Ticket, really good at 1/4. I think it's actually in a great spot now. I still think there's no world you take this on 4/6, but like this is kind of showing we're kind of out of ways to buff this, I think.
Yeah, I can't believe it's gone up to 50%. It like blows my mind because it started out much lower.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I do wonder if like this is, again, if we talk about the next set, if this is one that's actually supposed to be a gold augment, kind of like Trade Sector, but then it becomes like too comparable to Trade Sector, and so like that gets really awkward. So yeah,
we'll have to do something about it for sure long term.
Yep. Hextech Unity removed. Good.
Yep.
Good.
Sad, but good.
Hextech Heart being moved from silver to gold. I think this was a good change. It's interesting because I think sometimes in the data you look at it and it has kind of a low top 4 rate now, but it actually still has a very decent like win percentage. It still shows how easy it is to make 8 Hextech, and 8 Hextech is still very good. It's still really good with Sivir. I think this is where it was supposed to be. So,
yep. I think this one plus like the removing the Hextech Crust, I think this was just correct.
Yep.
For the power level of the trait. Yeah.
Yep. High 5. I mean, I don't have a bunch to add here. I do think it was good we knocked it down to 4. I think that was much healthier. I see people take this and be happy with it. So, like, cool. It's not overpowered, so cool. Is it a bit too swingy sometimes? Yeah. Watching the Sivir comps use this to get their Jinx, to get their 4/4/2 online. You know.
Yeah.
But, like, honestly, for a 0 combat power augment, I actually think it's pretty healthy. And so, again, should it be in TFT long term? Question mark. But for this set, yeah, probably correct.
Yeah, agree. I actually really like the way this augment landed. I think it ended up being like super exciting because it's a tier 2 now, not a tier 3, comparing itself to like all the other exciting prismatics. At tier 2, you're like, holy crap, 4/5 costs, and kind of you can get your 5 costs online a lot earlier and kind of have direction of like, can I carry? Is it possible for me to carry a 5 cost this game? So I think that kind of like dynamic made it a much like not just more exciting, but also like way more balanced.
Yep. Irresistible Charm. This one's hard to distinguish from like Debonaire's performance separate, because Debonaire's right now I think are one of the like lowest performing verticals right now. But even if they were doing okay, I don't know. I look back at this and I'm like, is this actually a fun augment? Not really. It's just generic defense on a trait that doesn't really want generic defense. I don't know. I almost wonder if this is another one that's like, it's too late in this set, but like, should we have just cut it? Maybe.
Yeah. I mean, I'm working on augments for set 7. I'm not gonna say that right. Yeah, I am. Yeah. So it's augments for set 7. But basically, there's like we have frameworks around like what's fun, what's good, what's a good augment, what's a bad augment. This one would definitely fall into the bad augments, and I made this one for set 6.5 too. But basically now with like all of our learnings, I think the augment now at tier 2 is balanced, but I don't think this was a good augment to begin with. There's no like real decision making around it, and it doesn't really like change up the way you play Debonairs. So ultimately, not an augment that should have been in the set, but it's balanced now with this change.
All right. Junkyard. This is one that I think, this one's rough. Because the augment's balanced now. Like it's just balanced. It's not fun. It's just balanced. But I think the thing that makes this really gross is when you compare it to Component Grab Bag, right? It's like Junkyard on 1/4 versus Component Grab Bag on 1/4. It's like one gives you 3 right away. The other gives you 3 in 12 rounds. and then eventually you start getting more, and you have to run scrap. That comparison starts to really not look good in Junkyard's favor. Which again just begs the question from a holistic point of view: should both exist? You know.
I don't know. I kind of feel like something that gives you something long term with a higher cap is interesting. Like you're investing in yourself, and like you're long term capping out your board higher than someone who gets component grab bag. That said, with it being at like 4,
It's
it's
a
kind of like
time.
a long time. Maybe then it should be because it's a ramping thing. Maybe it should be a silver augment, be at 4 turns, or maybe even 5 turns. It should be like a really slow ramp, but like, you know, it works out in your favor if you can survive to the end of the game.
Yeah, I feel like this is one of those things, and we didn't even talk about it, but like component grab bag, for example, is another example where like maybe the augment at 1/4 should only be 2 components, but then at like 4/6 should be 3 or 4 components, and so the comparison isn't quite as stark, for example.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Makeshift 3, fine. Like,
yep,
that was a small
agreed.
Pirates, I think this one. This is a good change. It actually makes people want to take this augment. Most of the time, they still bait themselves and they still lose. But the few times it doesn't, I've seen some people have some crazy pirate games, and it's fun. So when we talk about like 4 fun changes, I think this hit the nail on the head.
I think this is great. Yeah, I agree.
Scholar Crest removed. Yep. Goobums, I love you. Sharpshooter, gold to prismatic. I think this worked out, which is just crazy, and like frankly, we have to call ourselves out on like how long it took us to get there, because Sharpshooter changing on 6.5 to work with like all the units massively buffed us, and it took us like 5 patches of like nerf prismatic, and it's still good.
It's still good.
It's still good. So yeah, we really fucked this one up. Let's just call it what it is. We really took way too long to get this to a healthy spot.
Yeah, I mean, at the same time, we're like being careful about not swinging too much. But then again, this is an augment. We should have recognized like this is doing something that's like totally transformative for the trait, and so we make it a prismatic, and we just like slowly lower the rates as we need it, you know, to make it balanced. And that should have been like.
And you know, it's not on the list, but I'll call ourselves out on it too. You know what another one is? I think that's in this category that we still haven't acted on that probably should have by now. Binary airdrop.
Ah, yes. Binary airdrop.
Would you rather have prismatic item grab bag and get 2 items, or binary airdrop and get 5 items? Like, you know.
Yeah, I mean, one of them you get to control. One of them is like a highly fight variant. But I agree with you that like,
come on,
it is huge amounts of power.
Yeah.
So
yeah, we talk about frameworks for next set. This is another example where I'm just like, I think binary and sharpshooter are good examples of like we let it ride too long. They're fun as hell though. They're fun as hell.
Yeah.
So small, nailed it. I think so small is right where it should be. Finally.
Yeah, agree.
Cool. Spellblade seems healthy. I haven't checked the data, but seems fine.
Spellblade.
Oh god, we've become the streamers. We're tactics not tooling it.
Type it in. No. I think it's I think this brings it down to where it should be. I think also just like Arcanists are in general strong, so like this augment was doing better when we were buffing it for 12.7 or nerfing it for 12.7.
Yep.
Arcanists are still strong, so it's still good.
Triforce. I actually think this is right where it should be now. Yep. Good. Cool.
Agree. And one thing, it's like the numbers end up looking really small, especially on like Triforce 1. You get like 133 HP in attack speed, but I think players highly undervalue the amount of health 133 is. It's actually super impactful. Like I think even we did when we were
cybernetic
cybernetic ones.
Yeah,
we were like, it has 200 health. Why is it so broken? And now it's at 150, and it's still like really. Those are some of the best augments.
Yep.
So 150 health makes a massive difference for your team.
I think Triforce is, like I said, I think if we're ever going to do this like 3-class thing, I think Triforce is finally where it should be. So.
Yep.
Thieving Rascals. I feel like this is where it's supposed to be now. But I'm just going to call it how I see it here, that this is just a worse version of Junkyard when it comes to design. The variance in this is just too dramatic. And we talk about like acceptable variance in TFT. The number of times I've had someone reach out to me and be like, I took Thieving Rascals, had it at 2-1, and I got 2 items across the entire game, is just, it's not acceptable.
Is that possible? I think that's possible.
It is
Yeah.
possible. I know we have some, so like people don't know, we do have some things in there built in to protect from like the insane variance cases, but like not enough. Not enough.
Yeah. But it's also more fun than Junkyard because it comes on your Yordles and it's stuck on your Yordles because they're rascals. But yes, I agree from a balance perspective. Both of those things make the augment weaker than Junkyard, and so
yeah,
we probably do some tuning behind the like the worst case scenarios, basically.
Yeah, I think if we literally had said like, you know, sometime every 4 turns, one of them is going to have an item, and we made sure it was like very clearly pattern defined, so that sometimes it went like, you know, none item, none item, but like over the long term it was always evenly distributed. That might have been a better execution that got us the same thing. But leaving it to 33% chance, there's cases where, like I said, they get 7 of their components by like 3-5, and like that's not okay.
Yep, makes sense.
So
agree.
Tiny Titans. Okay, this is a spicy one. How do you think this one turned out?
Yeah, so like the best use case of this is really unbalanced. Basically, people take this on 1-4, play Mercs, and cash out with infinite HP, and then like win the game. And so like that change is not too great. But I think otherwise, Augment is like in a much better spot. It wasn't very exciting at for gold at 1-4 and 3-3 only. So I don't know. Do you disagree?
I don't disagree. I think the ceiling, like you said, the ceiling is too high on this, right? Or it's like, I think the better version is like you run Mercs, and then at 3-3 you see it and you take it. That's the version where it's like, whoo, okay, this is a little much. But it's interesting because like if you take Mercs out of the equation, I actually think it's a very balanced and good augment. Mm-hmm. And that's why I look at set 7, and I kind of mentioned this on the podcast yesterday. Like if we don't have lose streak economic traits, I think this augment actually ends up very fine and could be very healthy for the game long term. So it's just its relationship with Mercs, I think, that's problematic.
Yeah.
So
makes sense.
Twin Shot Soul, fine. I mean,
good.
If anything, Twin Shots feel a little out of the meta right now. I don't see many vertical Twin Shots, but
Twin Shot Soul. I'm just kidding.
Oh god.
I'm just kidding. I kind of, but also we know that like the ultimate, like when you build up an actual Twin Shot comp, the ceiling is really high.
Oh yeah, it's great.
Super strong. So like Twin Shot Soul enables you to hit that, and so I think this is a good change. I don't think it's like,
in fact, without looking at the data, my guess is Twin Shot Soul is very good at 1-4, and like meh at 3-3 and 4-6.
Do you want me to look it up?
I mean, sure. Again, okay. I'm not looking. That is literally just my like watching streams and guessing. Because like, if you get it early and you're like, cool, I can like go into this, you can probably spike 5 Twin Shot pretty well. But I bet not a lot of comps are like accidentally stumbling into it.
So, I'm looking at Master Plus. Twin Shot Soul is below average on 1-4 and about like slightly tiny bit above average on 3-3 and 4-6.
Okay, so actually the opposite of what I said. So okay.
I guess it's more just like players are they're not, if they take it on 1-4, they're kind of like forcing a comp, but then if they take it on 3-3 and 4-6, they're more like they're kind of already had that direction, and that's the only time they take it.
But it does sort of back up the thought that Twin Shot has kind of fallen out of favor right now.
Yes, Twin Shots have become weaker.
Okay, cool. Windfall. We talked about this change. I think this is a good change for the patch and a bad change for the game. So,
yes, inflating augments to this level is kind of sus.
Yep, and I definitely have seen people say that now the 4-6 version is broken, and I could probably believe this. Maybe 50 would have been a safer answer.
It looks balanced in the data, but like...
Yeah, but I mean, the thing about the data that we always have to keep coming back to is even at Master, there's a lot of players that are like playing suboptimally. Yep. Mercs is the best example of this. Like, if you look at Mercs and all the Merc augments, not only do they look unbalanced, they look bad. They look like just laughably bad. The problem is the ceiling for a high skill player is just so much higher.
I know, yeah.
It cannot be the way we look at the information here. So
yeah, agree.
And I think I'll say I think Windfall is the kind of augment we can see in Worlds where like a China player who's been doing their full econ uses it to fast 9 with 50 gold at 4/5, and all of a sudden hits a 3-star 5 cost before anyone knows what the hell happened.
And that'll be hype if that happens. But also, yeah, I agree.
So. All right, Woodland Charm. I call this change uneventful.
Mm-hmm.
It's like it's not a very popular augment. So.
No.
And then Woodland Trinket. Good riddance.
Good.
Yeah.
Yeah, good.
Cool. Traits. Scholar. I think this worked out. I'm still not, like, obviously I'm not seeing a ton of Scholar comps, but, like, VIP Syndra with lifelong learning is actually kind of playable. 6 Scholar is, like, actually pretty nutty if you can get, like, a Scholar Soul. I think it made Scholar Soul more desirable. So, like, cool.
Yep. 6 Scholar is wild now, but still not that often. I hit that often and not like broken. So I would call this a good change.
Yeah. Speaking of change, Twin Shot. So this is the nerf I'm looking at. I look back at and I'm like, did this really need to happen? I don't know. I don't know.
I mean, we were going off what we had back then, and like Twin Shots were really, really good. Then again, it's like maybe with the Sharpshooter change, like that was enough, and we didn't. So
yeah,
could see it.
I feel like this Twin Shot change was a miss though, and like the fact that 5 Sharpshooter is losing to like Sivir comps is probably not okay. So,
and maybe speaks more to Sivir though than like Twin Shot.
Yeah, that's a whole other discussion.
Yeah.
Yordle 6. I mean, for as risky as these kind of changes are, this did nothing. Like, is anybody playing Yordles? Not really. Occasionally, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I think it helped. I don't know. I've seen 6 Yordles do pretty well. It's still a lot of things need to go right as they do need for Yordle comp, but like this helps, you know. So I think this was a good change.
Okay. Ash. So this one's spicy. I'm gonna say this is good though, because it is good. There's a playable reroll comp. Right now the meta is very much legendary focused. It's very much race to Kaisa, race to Jinx, use the Sivir, that kind of stuff. Because even like the Voracious Appetite, it's race to Kaisa. Having a playable reroll comp is good. And so I think Ashe being a little strong is like healthy. You could argue that maybe this should have been 105, but like I actually think this is healthy, and like seeing an Ashe win at last chance qualifier, I think was good. So
yeah, and it's not like Ashe is okay. So we were a little bit afraid that like Ashe would be too strong, but like Ashe is nothing wild right now. It's like she's good. She can win games, and this is great, So I would call this like a decent change.
Corki. So I know this change was targeted at Yordle 3 opener. And so for that reason, I think this change was correct. The Yordle 3 opener got weaker. But again, I go back to then the Twin Shot change, and I'm going, I don't think we needed to do the Twin Shot change in conjunction with this.
I agree.
So
we also wanted to reduce Corki 3 ceiling, which I think we did. And also like we kind of compensated with the Yordle 6 mana reduction buff anyways. But yeah, with that, no need to change the Twin Shot.
Tryndamere. This is one, I think this one's hilarious because I think when the patch first came out, there was this like brief moment where everyone thought Tryndamere was actually going to be really good. We saw like China actually be like, hey, there's this Tryndamere builds that work. I think people were kind of getting on the Tryndamere hype train, and that died about 4 days later when people realized Tryndamere's Garbanzo. He's still bad. So like this buff is fine, and they're talking about balance thrashing. I'm glad we didn't overbuff, but like he's still bad.
Yeah, I mean, he's not bad.
He's bad.
He needs a lot of setup.
Yeah.
But if you hit, you're chilling.
Yeah,
you're great.
You and I talked about this where it's like the ceiling of like 3-star Warwick, 3-star Tryndamere, 3-star Quinn with a challenger augment or 2 and 5 Chemtech, 4 challenger, or even 6 challenger is like
6 challenger.
Pretty good. But even that's like not probably as good as it should be.
I mean, the 6 challenger version I think is very, very strong, but just you need to hit. Not only do you need to get to 6 challenger, which you want to be like level 8, then you also want to hit all these other rerolls. Really hard to hit.
And then we talk about this meta though, right? And it's like, well, then what does it run into? It runs into the scrap comp. It can't kill anything, can't proc its challenger proc, and still loses anyway. So
yeah, so I think once we bring down the top, Tryndamere will be in a better spot.
Yeah,
like you'll need less of a perfect setup. You'll still need a good setup, as with all reroll comps should be, but less bad. But yeah, I think good change, and hopefully, once we do other changes, this will be like a great change.
Draven. I think this was not enough. I have some bias here. I'm like, maybe someone will show me I'm wrong, but like Draven seems like the worst forecast by like a country mile. So
It's really surprising. I know we talked about this a little bit also, but just like Draven looks really good in the data, and we're not seeing a lot of Draven, but like when Draven works, he's good. He's just not popular and not great into this meta either. So, which is surprising why he's so good in the data also, with items.
yeah,
Um,
I don't have an explanation for that, but like I have yet to see a Draven do well in this meta, even with like hitting it early and hitting good items. It just I don't know. I struggle to make this Draven work. So
yeah. Either way, I think like directionally, this was good.
yeah.
Maybe
I mean, at least it was a
not
buff.
enough,
At least it
but
was a buff.
yeah, at least it was a buff.
Seraphine buff. I think this worked out great.
Yeah.
I think it helped Innovator a bit. I think we're seeing some rise of Innovator again in the China meta. I think this was good.
It's good. We're also seeing some Seraphine carry do well, which is cool, which is really cool. It's great, kind of the goal with this change. So glad it worked out.
All right, Sivir.
It's time.
Nerf. This was a nerf. I mean, Sivir was nerfed. The $1 million question is, was it nerfed enough? And I know next patch we don't have any Sivir changes, so I guess the big thing I think we should talk about is like you and I have been debating how to nerf Sivir. I've been very much in the number of bounces camp. I know you've mentioned that feels pretty bad. Like clearly, again, direction wise, at least we nerfed her. Was it enough? We'll see at Worlds. Clearly, perception. I know multiple players have reached out to us and have been like, "You need to be patch Sivir even further." I think Sivir's interaction with Last Whisper in particular is a little gross. But any other like, what are your thoughts here? Because I got one more thing, but
basically, like going into this patch, there was a lot of focus on Sivir, a lot of sims, and like just watching Sivir play out, trying out different changes to see how that impacts her win rates. Are concerned, comps counter, don't counter her positioning. Lots of thinking about it, and we tried doing the reducing her number of bounces, and it felt like it's not only like a really sizable buff from a damage perspective, it also like hits Hex Tech, and then we'd have to compensate Hex Tech in a way. But also, it just felt really, really bad because in most scenarios where you have no control over like how it bounces, it just doesn't do anything. And so Sivir felt really bad. And so like with these changes, before we launched this patch, it's like these looked correct from our internal stuff. Went out, it seemed fine at first, and now we're getting to the point again where like it seems too good. And I think the part where we missed, and it was something that like we thought about and like didn't double nerf basically this comp was nerfing Scrap. I think we should have also nerfed Scrap, and I think that would bring the Sivir to a reasonable place because then she doesn't have all like the defensives to like ramp up and like deal all this damage. And like we can see that like from Hex Tech, if her frontline actually dies, she's not that good. And so when Scrap is weaker, she'll be weaker, and so that should work out.
I think that's
my biggest regret.
Yeah,
it's not nerfing Scrap in this A patch.
Yeah, I think that's fair. The one thing I'd add, though, that I think is still a miss here is Sivir 1. The difference between Sivir 1 and Sivir 2, specifically because of the way she interacts with her traits, where Striker is flat AD and Hextech is flat shield, flat damage on bounce. The difference between Sivir 1 and Sivir 2 is like one of the most minuscule differences we've ever had in like a carry. And I think Sivir 1 stabilizes you so hard in a lot of these comps. That's the thing I think we missed on, was a bigger nerf to just Sivir 1. Like if you told me this attack speed number here, instead of saying 45-65, was like 20-65 or 30-65, that might have actually been the thing it needed, because then that way it's like you still have to hit the Sivir 2. You can't stabilize off this Sivir 1 sitting on 1,000 HP shield, basically doing as much damage as the Sivir 1 or Sivir 2 would do.
Yeah, I mean, so I think the big part there is like the survivability. Like the that huge shield makes the difference a lot less.
But it's true of Hextech or Scrap, though. That's the thing. Like, I think even the 6 Hextech version has this problem, and that's why I'm saying like we really have to fix the gap between Sivir 1 and Sivir 2. Let's assume Sivir 2 is actually where it should be. Like you said, all the sims you did, I think that's correct, but Sivir 1 is like 80% of that.
So like I agree, I think I don't like hard disagree, but I kind of disagree, as in like from a DPS perspective, she is significantly weaker because of the 1.8 times damage multiplier, even though like
No, because Striker's so
Striker
much of
reduces
it.
that.
Yeah,
I agree.
That's the thing. Striker reduces that a lot. Hextech reduces that a lot. Normally it should be 1.8, but it's not, and that's the problem.
But there's still that 1.8 times multiplier onto her base, like which is a lower percentage of an upgrade, and also she has one fewer bounce, which is a lot less damage basically, and a lot less reach to hit the backline. So I think it actually makes it like there's actually a pretty large gap between Sivir 1 and Sivir 2. It's just that Sivir 1 is too good, because she doesn't die, and her comp's really, really tanky.
Okay.
I'm not like super strong on this, and like maybe I'll get proven wrong, but that's based on like what I've tried. It's like this is what
I'm still pretty insistent that like Sivir 1 is still not it's not enough of an upgrade to go from Sivir 1 to Sivir 2, and Sivir 1's too good. So anyway,
I don't know. We've
planted our flags, and this is this is why we do these postmortems, right? You can see we don't agree, and that's okay, and we'll learn and figure out which one was right as we go. So
yeah,
cool.
Your face will learn and figure out which one.
See, right? He's learning. He's learning.
Oh, there we go. There we go.
The tech. All right. Galio change. It's fine. It didn't do anything, which it wasn't going to, but fine.
It gave you YouTube videos, so that's good.
Yes, the true measure of every change.
Yes.
But no, I mean, I think Galio, like, believe it or not, I do think Galio is actually in like an okay spot. But I think every time someone gets baited into trying like an itemized Galio, it's like, maybe you shouldn't have done that. So
yeah, I think we kind of missed on making the fantasy of like ultimate slam Galio with HP scaling. It's more of just, it didn't work out that well, and we learned from that. But basically, like, you can try it. It'll be pretty fun, as you've seen in Mort's other YouTube
12-9?
videos. But
12-9?
Nah, yeah. The return of Clapio. Is it time?
There you go. Zeri. This change seems fine. I think Zeri still has the same problems she does, which is 1 star is too fragile. 1 star ends up kind of just falling over, dies to like a Sivir bounce or 2 or something, and ends up dying. So you need Zeri 2. Zeri 2 with good items is actually probably better than a lot of the S tier comps right now. It's just so hard to ramp into that Zeri 2. That's one of the things we talk about, like the 442 comp. One of the reasons that comp is so good is it's just like it has a really nice level 7, a really nice level 8, and then it ramps right up into that level 9 with the Jinx, whereas like the Zeri comp, it's like its level 7 and 8 are atrocious. So
yeah, and I think one of the things we missed with this change, like I think directionally we're correct in buffing Zeri, but I think we should have narrowed the gap between Zeri 1 and Zeri 2 also. It feels like the gap there is a little bit too large.
Yep. Cool. More augment changes. Gonna go fast on these. Built diff. Yep. Good to nerf. It's interesting. I know some challenger players were saying built diff 1 is actually significantly better than built diff 3. I know data doesn't necessarily match that, but it's very interesting just like where built diff has ended up. Because I know for a while in this set, people were like, it's a dead augment now. Now it's back to not a dead augment because Victor and Kaisa are good again. So, but overall, I mean, I think built diff is exciting still.
Yep.
Featherweights, great. Doesn't show up before 6, great.
Yep.
Keeper buff, great. It seems fine.
Agreed.
Lifelong learning no longer on 3-3. Yup. Good change. Luden's not on 4-6. This one, I don't know. Like, I think this is where we like crossed a line into like maybe a little too restrictive.
Yeah.
So
these augments kind of like are supposed to shape your game. I think if it was like Luden's Echo 3 doesn't show up, Luden's Echoes 1 and 2 can still show up, so you can kind of like still play around them in a way that's not too swingy. Yeah. Maybe. But agree though, in general, we're kind of getting really restrictive.
Yeah. Merc, Heart, and Crest no longer appear on 4-6. This was correct. I actually think Merc's Soul might... It's so hard, because like... The problem is right now, and this is one of the things I want to throw into 12-9, is just 7 Mercs is like awful. It's like legitimately awful. And so I want to fix that so that 7 Merc isn't awful. But then if we fix that, like maybe this should be undone. So I don't know.
I think, or we can do it in a way that like lets 5 Merc players get these, but not the rest. I don't know if that's completely possible yet, but something along those lines where like 7 Merc can be more hittable.
Yep. Rich Get Richer no longer appears on 3-3. Good.
Mhm.
Until we can do the thing where Rich Get Richer isn't the exact same augment on 1-4 and 3-3. Like, they shouldn't be the exact same augment. Stored Power, good. Trade Sector, good. True Twos, good. Underdogs on 4-6. I should have realized this because I was the one who suggested we put this in. It's a tier 1. The odds that tier 1s even show up are like so low anyway. This is just like, who gives a crap? This change was pointless. So.
Yeah.
It's fine.
I don't know.
It's not bad. It's just pointless.
Yeah. I mean, I think it was still a decent change, but yeah, I think it was more just like the augment is bad when you pick it on 4-6, and so we stopped giving it.
Vernonvale. So Vernonvale is an interesting one, right? Because like from a performance and numbers perspective, this change was good. But like in a perfect world, Vernonvale would be the kind of augment you would get and go, hey, I can build a comp around this now, and I can build my items knowing I've got Vernonvale. Yes. I don't have to build Quicksilver. That's just not quite how it worked out. And so, I don't know. I'd love to get to a world where like there's a version of Vernonvale that is approachable at 1-4, but clearly this isn't it, and so good change overall.
Yeah, I agree. I think it'd be really good if you can like take this and be like, I don't need Banshees and I don't need Quicksilver. I'm going to build it like a melee carry and give 3 offensive items, whatever that is. Yep. Agree.
Cool. Caitlyn, I think this worked out. I think it's a good change.
Yep.
Talon, yep. Jirachi still be one tricking.
Yep.
Cho'Gath, fine. Cho'Gath is like playable. We talk about Voracious Appetite being OP. Most of the good Voracious Appetites aren't playing Cho'Gath, so like this didn't ruin Mutant or anything. Like this was a good change. Cho'Gath might finally be where he's supposed to be. I still think the Cho'Gath 3s are a little too weak, but
yeah. Yeah, and the fact that it's not like the viable strategy, but it also is like we don't really have the strong mutants don't include Cho'Gath right now.
Yep. Senna buff, good, but didn't really do much, is all I'll say. So.
Not enough.
Yeah. Ahri buff, I think this is good. Ahri feels like, again, we still have some problems with the top, but like when that Ahri ramps up and starts like 1v5ing and like, two-shotting a 2-star Jace and stuff like that, it feels pretty good. So like,
yep.
I don't know. I feel like Ahri is like as good as she's ever going to be with this design.
Yeah, we were kind of coming off a patch where like people skipped over Ahri in Arcanist and played, Victor from Malzahar, and so this brought her up more into the level of those other units and make her more playable in syndicates too, which didn't really get achieved, but like I think directionally it was correct.
Yep. Jhin, this one I actually think it was a mistake. I think we put in the 0 to 50 in the 12-6B, right?
Yep.
And then a bunch of people freaked out and were like, "Oh my God, Jin's going to be wildly OP." So we put this into 12-7 as a preemptive attack. And then it turned out the Jhin at 0 out of 50 was fine and not actually that wildly OP and actually just felt kind of good. And so I don't know. I feel like this actually undid a lot of the good that change did. And so I feel like this ended up being a mistake.
I think in like the context specifically of this patch, yes, but in a world where Sivir comps aren't taking over level 7, I think this will be the correct pacing for Jhin.
Okay, that might be true. I could see that. Kha'Zix's jump speed increased. I think this was good. You could argue that this led to some more mutant power, but I still think this was good.
Yeah, with Synaptic, he's very, very strong now with this increased jump speed, but I think it's healthy and correct, and he looks right now, so.
Yeah. Victor, this was a light change that is good. Victor boards are still some of the highest ceiling boards out there. This didn't ruin Victor. As far as like non-balanced thrashing nerfs go, this is a great example.
Yep.
So, cool. And that's it. And so, yeah, obviously the big thing here is like nothing on Voracious Mutant. That's the one of the ones we see pretty commonly. It's almost become kind of the new Synaptic where like people are definitely going, oh, it's a Darkstar lobby, build a bunch of Zarats, try to force the Kaisa. But at least it's better than Synaptic where it was like 3-2 roll down Malzahars.
Oh yeah.
At least we see Darkstars flail out when they don't find their Kaisas, So
and the ones where like many players in the lobby, like we saw in Last Chance qualifier for North America, like the ones who didn't hit the right items and the right setup for it and tried to force it, like just went pot 4. So it's not like you can just kind of coast into a free top one with blue buff Malzahar anymore. So
it's clearly got the highest ceiling of any comp though right now, I think.
Yeah.
So
yeah, it's another one where it's like it was on a debatable list for B patching, but didn't really cross the line of like this is toxic for the game. So, but and definitely then, something that was on our minds.
Yeah, it's like I said, Sivir we debated, Draven. Anything else cropping up that you can think of?
Is there anything else that we like talked about that was?
Oh, Mercenary. So I think Mercenary is the other one worth talking about because we talk about ceilings, right? And how Voracious Appetite has a big ceiling. I know there are some players that are very concerned that, like, especially with the checkmate format at Worlds, that Worlds may be decided by whoever hits the 2-1 Mercenary on that final game, right? And this one's interesting because, again, I agree with the sentiment that Mercenary has the biggest ceiling, but it also has a big floor. We saw in the Last Chance qualifiers a couple times players crashing out at 4-2, 4-3, trying to run those Merc comps. So it'll be very interesting to see. And it brings, this is an interesting discussion of like a normal comp. Let's just take a normal, 6 Hextech comp, right? And it has its ceiling and its floor, very easy, very flat, compared to something like Mercenary, which has a very low floor and a very high ceiling. Those variant shapes are going to be interesting. And this is true of augments also, right? True 2s. We've talked about this where it's like true 2s and you get Zyra and Zillion versus you get 2 Warwicks is a very different experience, And so how much do we need to rein in those ceilings and floors of different outcomes? We talked about how Thieving Rascals was a bad example of this, right? Because the ceiling and floor difference is way too high. And so I think this is going to be something we'll probably need to do a balance framework around pretty quickly to figure out what those variant ceilings and floors are. So,
yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I agree. I also think that like it'd be exciting to see how like the current state of it makes players play this out at Worlds. They're kind of opting into this experience of like really low floor. They know they can like have really bad cash outs or just like game winning cash outs, but you're opting into that type of experience, and you're also extremely subject to being griefed. It's like one of the things that other players can actively control, like how your game plays out, and so you're opting into that type of experience, and like is that risk reward worth it? And I think that kind of thing is also kind of interesting to watch these like pro players play out. But yeah, for long term, I think it'd be healthy for us to rein in all like the really extreme outliers or with variances.
Cool.
Yeah.
Okay, I think that's gonna do it for us. We've talked enough about this patch. Worlds next weekend. Can't wait. I guess I can announce I'm casting, so get to wake up at 2 a.m, so that'll be fun. Yeah, because at 2 a.m. I know.
Casting Worlds.
I know. And then after that, we've got 12-8. Or I guess 12-8's before Worlds, technically. Patch rundown tomorrow for that. And then 12-9 is the For Fun patch. Hopefully we'll surprise you and delight you with that. 12-10 is where Set 7 goes to PBE. So basically, starting with Worlds, we've got a lot of announcements coming. We can finally get to show some of the cool stuff we're working on. So, yeah. Cool.
Exciting.
All right. I think that's going to do it from us. Until next time, take it easy.